The last person I ever expected to see that afternoon was her mother, standing alone by the edge of a hotel pool, staring into the water like it held the answers to questions neither of us had ever been brave enough to ask. For a moment, I thought I was imagining things. The sun was too bright, the air too heavy with chlorine and regret. But when she slowly turned her head and our eyes met, 12 years of silence came rushing back like a tidal wave I had spent a decade trying to outrun. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet miracles that sometimes find us when we least expect them, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment about what forgiveness means to you, and subscribe to the channel. You never know whose life a simple story might change. I hadn't seen my ex-wife, Layla, in over 10 years. We had divorced quietly, painfully, the kind of separation that doesn't end in screaming but in long silences and doors closing softly. We were young when we married, too young to understand that love alone doesn't fix two broken people. I was struggling to build a small construction business, constantly stressed, constantly chasing money that always seemed just out of reach. She wanted stability, security, something I couldn't give her at the time. We tried. God knows we tried. But in the end, the arguments about bills, about my late nights, about her feeling invisible, became too heavy for the foundation we had built. When she left, she didn't take much. Just her clothes, a few framed photographs, and the warmth that once filled our tiny apartment. I remember standing in the kitchen after she walked out, staring at the dent in the wall where we had once planned to hang a clock. I thought I would hate her forever. Instead, I just felt empty. Her mother, Farzana Begum, had always been polite to me but distant. She had never believed I was good enough for her daughter. I couldn't blame her. I barely believed it myself. After the divorce, she cut off all contact. I assumed they had both moved on to better lives, better men, better futures. And yet, there she was, by the pool of a modest hotel in Islamabad, the same city where everything had fallen apart. I was there for work. My company, which had nearly collapsed after the divorce, had slowly grown over the years. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. I had poured every ounce of my grief into it. Late nights became normal. Weekends didn't exist. I told myself success would prove something, to her mother, to the world. But deep down, I knew I was trying to prove something to myself. When I saw Farzana Begum that day, she looked smaller. Age had softened her sharp features. Her once jet black hair was streaked with silver, and her shoulders carried a weight I didn't remember. For a moment, I considered turning around. Pretending I hadn't seen her. Walking back into the lobby and letting the past stay buried. But something held me there. I approached slowly, each step heavy with memory. As I got closer, I noticed her eyes were red, as if she had been crying. She looked at me without anger, without the cold judgment I had grown used to in my imagination over the years. Instead, there was something else. Exhaustion. And maybe, just maybe, relief. We exchanged the usual formalities, the kind people use when they're standing on emotional landmines. She asked how I had been. I told her I was managing. I asked about her health. She nodded and said it was fine. The conversation hovered above the real questions, circling them like cautious birds. Then she said something that made my heart stop. Layla is not okay. The words landed harder than any insult ever could. For years, I had built a narrative in my head, that she was happier, that she had found someone wealthier, more stable, more everything than I had been. I imagined her living in a bigger house, smiling more than she ever did with me. That image had hurt, but it had also given me strange comfort. At least one of us had escaped the wreckage. But now, standing by that pool, I realized I had been wrong. Her mother told me that Layla had remarried 2 years after our divorce. The man had money, influence, the kind of confidence that impresses families. At first, everything seemed perfect. Vacations, gifts, a beautiful house. But slowly, cracks began to show. Control disguised as care. Jealousy disguised as love. Isolation disguised as protection. By the time anyone understood what was really happening, it was too late. She didn't give me every detail, but she didn't need to. I could see it in her trembling hands, in the way her voice faltered when she spoke of her daughter. Layla had left that marriage recently. She was back in Islamabad, staying with her mother. Emotionally drained. financially entangled, afraid of starting over again. As I listened, something inside me shifted. Not anger, not jealousy, just a deep, aching sadness for the girl I once loved, the girl who used to dance barefoot in our kitchen when the electricity went out and we lit candles just to feel less poor. I asked where she was. Her mother hesitated before telling me that Layla was upstairs, in one of the hotel rooms. They had come to meet a lawyer about finalizing the separation. The hotel was neutral ground, away from neighbors and gossip. For a second, I felt the old instinct to run. What right did I have to step back into her life? I had failed her once. I had let my pride and my stress drown the tenderness we once shared. Maybe my presence would only reopen wounds. But then her mother said something I will never forget. She told me that in the darkest moments of her second marriage, Layla had once whispered that at least I had never tried to control her. That with me, she had felt poor but free. Those words cut through me. All these years, I had blamed myself entirely. I had replayed our arguments in my head, convinced that I was the villain in her story. And maybe I had been immature, overwhelmed, too consumed by my own struggles. But I had never tried to cage her spirit. Standing there, I realized something else. Success had come, yes. My business was stable now. I owned a small office. I had even bought an apartment. But none of it had filled the space she left behind. I had dated occasionally, but I never allowed anyone close. It was easier to stay guarded than to risk breaking again. Her mother asked me if I would consider talking to Layla. Not to rekindle anything, just to remind her that she was not broken. That her first marriage had not been a mistake, only a lesson. My heart pounded as I walked toward the elevator. Each floor felt like a year rewinding itself. When the doors opened, I saw her sitting in a chair near the window of the hallway lounge, staring out at the city skyline. Time had changed her, but not in the ways I expected. There was a quiet strength in her posture, but also fragility. As if she had fought too many battles in silence. When she looked up and saw me, shock flickered across her face, followed by something softer. Not anger, not regret, just recognition. We didn't rush toward each other. We didn't cry dramatically. Instead, we sat across from one another like two survivors comparing scars. The conversation started cautiously, but gradually, the walls began to lower. She told me about the loneliness of her second marriage. About how control can be subtle at first. How you can lose yourself without noticing. She admitted that she had chased security. Because she was tired of struggling, tired of worrying about rent and electricity bills. She had wanted comfort so badly that she ignored the cost. I told her about the years after she left. About the nights I slept in my office because I couldn't bear the silence of our apartment. About the mistakes I made, the contracts I lost, the slow rebuilding of my life. I confessed that I had carried guilt like a permanent shadow. Somewhere in that conversation, something healed. We were no longer the angry young couple who couldn't communicate. We were two people who had grown through pain. The blame that once divided us dissolved into understanding. We acknowledged that we had both been scared, both been flawed, both been human. The sun began to set outside the window, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. It felt symbolic, like the end of something old and the beginning of something uncertain but hopeful. I didn't ask her to come back. She didn't ask me why I never fought harder to keep her. We didn't need to. Instead, we talked about the future. Not necessarily together, but honestly. She wanted to rebuild her career. I offered to connect her with a client who needed someone with her skills in interior design. Not as a savior, just as someone who believed in her. When her mother joined us later, she looked at us differently. The suspicion was gone. In its place was gratitude. Maybe she realized that sometimes the man you once doubted is not the worst chapter in your daughter's story. That night, as I walked back to my room, I felt lighter than I had in years. Not because we had reunited romantically, but because the past no longer felt like a wound. It felt like a bridge. Over the next few weeks, we stayed in touch. Slowly, carefully. There was no rush, no dramatic declarations. Just conversations, support, shared memories that no longer hurt to revisit. She began working again, taking small projects. I watched her confidence return piece by piece. And one evening, months later, as we sat in a quiet cafe overlooking the same city that once witnessed our downfall, she looked at me with the same warmth I remembered from our early days. Not because she needed saving. Not because I had become wealthy. But because we had both learned what truly matters. We didn't rush into anything. We allowed trust to rebuild naturally. This time, we spoke openly about fears, expectations, boundaries. We were older now, wiser, less concerned with proving ourselves and more focused on understanding each other. Running into her mother by that poolside had felt like an accident. But sometimes life arranges collisions for a reason. That unexpected meeting forced me to confront my past, to release old guilt, and to realize that growth doesn't erase love, it refines it. If this story has touched your heart in any way, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs to believe in second chances, and subscribe for more stories that remind us of the power of forgiveness. And before we reach the final lines, I want to ask you something special. Please comment the word hope below if you believe that no ending is ever truly final. Because sometimes, the person you lost is not meant to disappear forever. Sometimes, they are meant to return when both of you are finally ready. That day by the poolside didn't just reconnect me with my ex-wife's mother. It reconnected me with the man I had once been before pride, fear, and insecurity took over. It reminded me that love is not about perfection. It is about growth, humility, and the courage to try again. And as I stood months later, watching Layla laugh freely under the evening lights, I realized something that changed everything. We had both thought our marriage was a failure. But in truth, it had been a foundation. A painful, imperfect foundation that taught us how to build something stronger. Life rarely gives us clean, beautiful second chances. Most of the time, they arrive disguised as awkward encounters, uncomfortable conversations, and memories we would rather avoid. But if we are brave enough to face them, they can lead us back to something we thought was lost forever. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone you still carry in your heart, please engage with this video, share your thoughts below, and let others know they are not alone in their journey. Your support keeps these stories alive. Because sometimes, all it takes to change everything, is one unexpected meeting by a quiet poolside, and the courage to walk toward the past instead of away from it.